denial of clergy abuse that includes pedophilia and rape, but actively involved in trying to conceal it from the public by shutting down this protest, which protests against both the clergy abuse itself and the cover-up and denial of the clergy abuse by not just Montreal Unitarians, but the top-level leadership of the Unitarian Universalist Association in Boston. So we're just going to have a look at the camera here, see if it's still recording. Oh yeah, we just went into a second clip. The camera records for about 17 minutes and 15 seconds, and then it hiccups and continues recording, but there's a little gap, and it records for the rest of a half hour. So we just started, 12-minute recording clip. So that's it. Marlo, I do believe Thomas, I'm not sure about the rest of it, but I do think it's Marlo Thomas Kennedy. Could be mistaken about that. I do like to fact check, which is more than can be said for a whole lot of Montreal journalists. But anyway, again, this is a prime example of a Unitarian Universalist woman who is involved in, or at minimum passively complicit in, the cover-up and denial of Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse that includes the sexual abuse of children by Unitarian Universalist ministers, not to mention Unitarian Universalist Sunday school teachers. And she's a huge hypocrite in that, as I said, on the one hand, she lobbies for defunding of the police, and on the other hand, she has no qualms about phoning up the SPVM or calling 911 to try to get them to come here and either arrest me on trumped-up criminal charges or ticket me, and so on and so forth. She absolutely is involved in trying to suppress this protest. I saw her just a few weeks ago on the phone. She was outside the church. She was on the phone, and a little while later, a couple of SPVM cops showed up. They were very good, I might say. They were very respectful. They respected my rights. There was some confusion, disagreement about whether or not I might be breaching court conditions. I told them that I'd been acquitted of all criminal charges, and that there were no court conditions on me. They weren't sure. The latest information they had was that I was still subject to court conditions, but we just agreed to disagree. They very respectfully and professionally said, okay, well, these aren't their exact words, but essentially what they said is, okay, we're not going to arrest you today. We will, look into the situation. And if we believe that you were in breach of conditions, well, then we'll send in a report to the, Crown Prosecutor's Office. So in other words, they handled it in a very diplomatic, non-escalating way. I mean, it was really, I'd say, very good police work. And it's unfortunate that that was not completely recorded. I normally record my interactions with SPVM police officers just so there's a record of everything that happened. And when I saw them coming, I put what I thought was a fresh battery in my camera, only it turned out not to be a fresh battery. It had to be an almost completely depleted one, because I only got about a minute's worth of recording before it died. And that's very unfortunate, because I would have been very happy to put a complete video up showing essentially professional, diplomatic, respectful work by a couple of SPVM police officers. Because as much as I criticize SPVM police officers when they behave in an unprofessional, disrespectful, authoritarian manner, I will praise them, commend them when they behave in a manner that I consider to be very professional. Even when I'm arrested. If I'm arrested and they arrest me in a manner that I consider to be, professional and respectful and everything, I'll say so very publicly. And in fact, I don't mind saying that all of the times I've been arrested, other than one, the police have been very respectful. Like, in terms of actually being arrested, the police were very, very good. Nothing to complain about, really, except for one occasion where a couple of rookies, basically tried to intimidate me, tell me I'm going to jail and this, that, and the other thing. And I filed a complaint about that. And I didn't file a complaint. I talked to the police station. I said I wanted to, have this dealt with. And I ended up having a meeting with the lieutenant and a sergeant detective. And I explained what happened, how I think I'd been arrested for unpaid tickets. And they took me in the car and they drove me a good distance away from the church, away from, it can't be the middle of nowhere in the island of Montreal, but they basically took me miles away from where, I wanted to be. And on the way there, they were telling me I'm going to jail and blah, blah, blah. So literally threatening me with imprisonment. So I told this to the lieutenant. The detective was off to my right. And I was basically complaining about being intimidated, or trying to, I wasn't actually intimidated, but they tried to intimidate me, during this arrest for tickets. And I'm explaining this to the lieutenant, and the sergeant detective to my right says, I'm going to arrest you, and this time there's going to be a psychological assessment. Or perhaps he said psychiatric assessment. But in any case, that was the upshot. Very forcefully, in an intimidating, manner. I'm going to arrest you, and this time there's going to be a psychiatric assessment. So I turned and looked at him, and I said, so you're suggesting I'm mentally ill? And he goes, you are mentally ill. And I said, okay, well, I'm mentally ill. What mental illness am I suffering from? And he goes, oh, well, I'm not qualified to diagnose you. I basically said, if you're not qualified to diagnose me, you're not qualified to say I'm mentally ill. And at that point, I wanted to file a complaint against him. The only problem is I didn't have any, hard evidence. I wasn't recording the conversation and so on. So it would have been just my word against his, just as it was in the case of these two police officers. So as much as I wanted to file a complaint against him for essentially intimidating me and, trying to essentially intimidate me to stop protesting. That's what it's all about. But, basically insisting that I'm mentally ill. That I thought that was worthy of a complaint, perhaps even more than these two rookie police officers, because this guy was like 50-something, he wasn't a young rookie. So what happened is I had no recording of this. It would have been just my word against his. I did have a witness. There was a lieutenant, but I couldn't be sure the lieutenant would be honest if I did file a complaint. He might say, oh, that never happened, kind of thing. So what happened is I continued protesting, and one day this same sergeant detective came along with a couple of younger police officers, plainclothes police officers, and they were like checking out my protest. He went into the church. The two younger guys were outside, and this time I had my camera and it was running and I was recording. And at a certain point he came out and walked by me, and as he walked by me I said, so do you still think I'm mentally ill? And he goes, yes. I can't remember exactly. Essentially he said yes, and I responded saying, well, I hope you don't mind if I still think you're a clown. But essentially I had hard evidence now that he had in fact characterized me as mentally ill. So I had evidence backing up that complaint. So I filed a complaint, took it to the Police Ethics Commission, and it was settled in what do they call it? Conciliation. In hindsight, I probably shouldn't have, but I wanted to show that I'm a reasonable person, so I basically, capable of being forgiving and everything. And so I decided to let it go when he sort of got rapped on his knuckles for his behavior. You know, it was made clear to him that his behavior was not acceptable in the conciliation. And so I said, okay, well, we'll let it go at that for now. But what I did not realize at the time was that apparently if a conciliation is accepted, that the whole thing just disappears. There's sort of no record of any misconduct on the part of the cop, and that, I believe, is not correct. And if I'd known that, I would have taken it all the way to a tribunal. So on that note, I'm just going to check my camera, make sure we still have some recording time left. Yeah, just a few minutes, so a couple of minutes of recording left. But I knew you were getting towards the end of it. I want to make sure the camera's still running. So again, it's Remembrance Day Sunday in Great Britain, November 14th, 2021, and I'm essentially got a Remembrance Day theme going here in terms of SPVM police officers, Quebec Crown prosecutors, and Quebec court judges repressing the democratic rights and freedoms that Canadian soldiers fought to defend and preserve in World War II, to say nothing of other wars. And I think on that note, we're pretty well done for this segment of video. We'll keep it running. We'll just let it run out of its usual amount of time. And then again, maybe not, because this guy might want to say a thing or two. So we're going to start a fresh clip.